Hi, this is Matvey. When I first started working with factories in China almost 15 years ago, I was afraid that they only made cheap furniture here, that I would constantly have to fix their mistakes, make excuses to clients, and redo things. And that to achieve truly high-quality results from the factories, I would have to spend a huge amount of time and effort. And in many ways, that's exactly how it was. But after dozens of pointless trips to factories in southern China, where 3 not-so-skilled Chinese workers were supposedly assembling Italian-quality furniture, and after redoing a lot of furniture at a loss for our clients, we finally found a factory that actually produces furniture of truly high quality. We want to show you exactly how this kind of furniture is made, from raw wood to the finished sofa.
We ensure quality through our control system. In every workshop and on every production line, there is a dedicated person responsible for quality control. We also have standards and checklists for every minor aspect of the product. This is necessary to make sure that quality cannot suffer due to the mistake of a particular craftsman. That's why people choose us. We have both local and international clients. Of course, there are a bit more Chinese clients, but for us it makes no difference. If we recall the projects we are especially proud of, well, for example, we have worked for several famous people, creating furniture for pianist Lang Lang, badminton champion Lin Dan, and NBA center Butter.
Now you'll find out how our sofas are made. The first stage of any sofa is drying. It may not sound like the most important step, but this is where 50% of the reliability and quality of the future furniture is determined. Because the frame is made from wood. It's like cooking. If you don't add enough salt at the very beginning, all those hours at the stove and money spent on delicious ingredients go to waste. Ash and pine are brought here in huge ship-sized beams and placed with their fellow trees in a special storage facility. Here they're kept for 5 days at a temperature of about 30 to 50 degrees, depending on the type of wood. During these days, the temperature is gradually increased, with the wood being checked every morning. After 5 days, it's time for the first test. Some of the fastest are ready to work after just 5 days, but most need more time to mature. Some trees actually need several months to dry perfectly. If you raise the temperature too quickly, or just throw the wood straight into a kiln at 80 degrees, it will simply crack. A couple of years later, some people try to save on electricity and rush the process. We only work with factories that adhere to these parameters. Because otherwise there's no point in using natural wood. It will just fall apart, start to warp and break after a couple of years. Once the boards are dried, the preparation of the frame elements begins. First, the wood is calibrated, the boards are leveled for thickness, and any excess millimeters from rough edges are removed. Then the cutting for the model begins. The factory has its own designers, and over the years they've accumulated their own templates. But they can also work from custom drawings or even just from reference photos.
I'm responsible for operating the high-precision SAS machine. It handles deep milling and processing of the parts. This equipment is designed for specific materials and types of wood. That's exactly what we work with here.
Large parts, like the lower section of a sofa frame, are simply cut with a saw. Sometimes you can make the entire blank with it, but more often a CNC milling machine is used. The craftsman enters the drawings into the computer, and the machine cuts out intricate patterns. I've been working with furniture for a long time, but it still fascinates me every time to watch how this happens.
When it comes to the wood we use at the factory, the selection is extensive. Solid wood, beech, walnut, oak. All the materials are top grade, high quality, and stable to work with. If you compare different types of wood, the best option is North American black walnut. After processing, it has a very smooth, beautiful texture, an even sheen, and a striking grain pattern. The surface turns out perfectly smooth and truly pleasant to the touch. For the frames of upholstered furniture, these kinds of boards are the best choice. They are laminated with a wood grain pattern on both sides. This way, the material remains stable and does not deform. It is strong, flexible, the thin sheets are easier to work with, and the thicker ones are even stiffer and more reliable.
It is very important not to make mistakes at this stage. Each subsequent trimming reduces the cost of the sofa. All the grooves must match up perfectly the first time. When all the parts are ready, all that's left is to assemble them. Assembling the frame is one of the most important stages. This is the skeleton of the sofa. Its shape, strength, and durability all depend on it. What I like about this factory is that the frame is always assembled by hand by a single craftsman. No conveyor belt, no team. One person handles everything from the first joint to the final sanding. Maybe it's not essential from a technological standpoint, but to me, there's something genuine about it. You know that there's a person behind your furniture, that it has an author. A pneumatic industrial stapler is used more often. At first glance, it seems that it's not very reliable, but in fact, it's the industry standard. These staples are driven in deeply under pressure. If the furniture is made from dry wood, they hold just as well, the screws. It's important to understand that in most models, an additional frame is placed over these joints, and of course a layer of upholstery. At this stage, you can already recognize the sofa by its shape, but there's still an important part ahead. How to make it not only sturdy, but also comfortable. And for that, you need good feeling. The frame is assembled. It seems like the main part is done, but in reality this is just the beginning. This is where the sofa gets its shape, volume, and comfort. They start covering it in layers. Oh God, I have to say this word again. Polyurethane foam. This is the upholstery workshop, or as I like to call it, the house of soft clouds. And I want to say the people working here are just as kind and gentle. But don't be fooled by the young craftsman's appearance. Even though he has an innocent face, he handles a knife like a pro. The softness is selected individually for each customer. The lion's share of comfort is created at this very stage, thanks to the careful selection of layers and the right balance of softness. For shapes with curves, the polyurethane foam is cut and sectioned accordingly. The filling of a sofa is like a cocktail. There are several types of strong drinks. The taste comes from the combination of one with another. A bit more whiskey, old-fashioned. Whiskey, Amaretto, Manhattan. Add some lime and you get an Irish mule. It's the same here. There are 4 types of polyurethane foam softness and 4 layers inside of the sofa, like a glass. There are 4 types of polyurethane foam softness and 4 layers inside of the sofa. Mix the proportions and firmness however you like. Here's my advice. It's best to add a thin layer of down as the final layer. Then you'll get the effect as if, when you sit down on the sofa, for a split second you sink into it and the sofa immediately supports you. Everything else from here on is about aesthetics. But here it's about the sensations. It's this feeling that determines how comfortable it will be to sit, whether you'll feel a hard edge, and whether the sofa will keep its shape after hundreds of evenings. The sofa has acquired a soft layer. Now all that's left is to dress it in fabric. So now the craftsman picks up a pencil and paper and starts drawing. All the details and curves that the weavers need to understand so the fabric fits snugly.
This stage of the work is quite complex. There are a lot of nuances here, and the cost of a mistake is very high. Even a small error can lead to real problems. At the early stages, this results in wasted materials. At later stages, it leads to reworking and revisions. This process requires special training. It took me about a year or 2 to fully master it. But I've been working here for over 10 years now, so I rarely make mistakes.
After the fabric has been cut, each piece is labeled and prepared. The sewing begins. Here, everything is just like in a tailor's shop. Precise seams, neat stitches, proper tension. In China, the seamstresses are very skilled seamstresses. I like that I can always be confident about this. There will never be any problems here, and nothing will need to be redone. There are hundreds of materials here, too many to list them all. All kinds of textiles, suede, leather. Depending on the model, different types of stitches are used. In some places there's a hidden seam that's completely concealed in the assembly, while in others there's a decorative stitch that, on the contrary, becomes part of the design. The areas where several pieces come together need to be especially neat. For example, corners, curves, or the transitions from the armrest to the backrest. Here, reinforced stitching is often added or the edges are finished by hand to prevent stretching and deformation. Some models feature decorative elements. Piping, hand stitching, soft edges. All of this is sewn separately and requires precision, literally down to the millimeter. Because on expensive furniture, a seam is not just a connection, but a part of the composition. When you look at the finished sofa, it seems like the fabric is just lying on it, as if everything came together by itself. But in reality, this is the most complex and sensitive stage of the entire assembly. Actually, what I like about working with this factory is that there are no jack-of-all-trades here. The production here consists of highly specialized experts. This person is responsible only for stretching the fabric. In fact, stretching the fabric is like an exam for all the previous stages. If the frame, upholstery, and cutting were done correctly, the fabric goes on easily. Perfectly matching seams, proper distribution of tension, no wrinkles, creases, or distortions. Everything is done by hand. With a stapler millimeter by millimeter. This is especially important on complex fabrics, velour, velvets, leathers. Such materials, as a rule, do not forgive mistakes. One careless press, and that's it, the fabric is ruined.
In my opinion, the difference with Italy is not great. We work at a very high level in terms of both materials and technologies. We really do use a lot of imported materials. Leather, fabrics, filling, internal structures, wood. All of this can be imported.
Upholstering is not just manual work. An experienced eye is important here. You watch how it lays, you feel it with your fingers. If something goes a little wrong, you let go and redo it. Sometimes you have to redo the same sofa 2, 3, or even more times, simply because you don't like how it sits. It's important to us that the fabric not only covers, but also accentuates the shape, so that the sofa looks good, so that when a person sits down, they understand that they're at home.
All the parameters, softness, firmness, comfort, are selected for each specific client. And that's my favorite part of the job. When the product reaches the client, our manager tells us about their impressions and passes on their gratitude. You realize that the things made by your own hands are appreciated by people, that you're making many people happier.
It's a very important stage. You might notice that the craftsman keeps patting the sofa. This is necessary so that the sofa arrives at your home well behaved. After the fabric is secured, the sofa is inspected from all sides. Every seam, every fastening point is checked. Corners, curves, gaps. The craftsman goes over the entire sofa with an iron to make sure everything fits perfectly. And of course, the sofa has to be padded. At this moment, the sofa essentially takes on its final shape. It's no longer just furniture, it's an item that will become part of the interior. Every seam here holds a story of craftsmanship, attention to detail, and respect for the future owner. Subscribe to the channel and like the video if you want to learn more about how our furniture is made. And if the story and quality of this factory resonate with you, visit our website. Our wonderful managers, with the same attention to detail, will help you choose the very piece of furniture that will delight you every day